You hear this cliche all the time, but they're excited about playing somebody else. We've inter-squatted, we've done a ton of drill work. Our kids have worked hard in the weight room and in conditioning, and all the stretching, all of the rehab type things that you have to do to get ready for a season. And I think we're in pretty good shape. I think our kids are mentally in a really good place, and physically as well. And so I think they're excited about getting to interact with our fans, and hopefully we can get some early good weather and get this thing going.
Talking to everybody, it seems like everybody's really excited about the offense. They talk about maybe a little more power on this team. Have you seen that?
I have. I mean, certainly when you talk about a Reed Humphreys has really come along and become a guy that I think can provide some power in the middle of our lineup. And he had a really nice freshman year, but I think he's ready to take that next step forward. And there's others. I think obviously Wes Ray is somebody that we need to have a great year, and I think he's very, very capable of that. He's worked really hard on his swing, and I think this is, this being his senior year, he wants to go out on top. I think Collins down the road is going to be very productive for our baseball team. I think he's a really productive hitter. And I think we have some new components also that are going to be really good players for us as well.
How has the approach to hitting changed under Coach Dillon?
I don't know that it's changed. I think that he adds a really personal touch. Hitting is a lot like golf in the aspect of there's a ton of one-on-one. There's a lot of touch and feel that goes into it. There's a lot of discussion because there's clearly not one way to do it. There's several ways to be successful, and I think he's done a great job connecting with our kids individually and really just working their plan, working their stroke with them every single day. And it's been an exciting transition.
Last year you were breaking in a new catcher. Talk about some of the guys that you got coming back this year with a little bit of experience this year.
Yeah, we have a couple of injuries behind the plate right now that are a little concerning. But I truly think that those guys are, as a unit, pretty good. Josh Lovelady is a young man who stepped into our program as a junior college transfer from Shelton State, who we think is going to be a really, really dynamic leader, defender. Really good. Cody Walker's come back and has really been very good for us too, in terms of calling a game, in terms of receiving, blocking, all those things. He's really improved his game as an offensive player. He's got a little bit of injury issue going on with him as well. So, and certainly when we get Gavin going, when he becomes fully available to us, I think he's very capable of being one of the best catchers not only in our league, but one of the best catchers in the country.
You mentioned new components in your lineups or new guys. Who are some new guys that you feel could make an impact this year?
Well, we have several of them. I'll just mention a few off the top of my head. Luke Reynolds is a left-handed hitting third baseman from Forest, Mississippi, who just came to our program. From Hines had a phenomenal year last year, and that's not by accident. You win with guys who are winners. You win with guys who are really good players, and certainly he's one of those guys. John Holland is a young man who transferred to us from junior college. He played his freshman year at Florida State. He's somebody who's a really exciting player. Michael Smith is a junior college outfielder who can really run, has power. I think the fans are really going to fall in love with the dynamic athleticism that he brings to the table. So, and that's just a few. We have several more that we feel like are going to be great players.
Your impressions of the new baseballs?
I think the new baseballs are going to make a subtle impact on the game. I don't think it's going to be dramatic, but I think there will be some subtle differences that'll change the game. I do think the ball is going further. I think that in certain ballparks, it's going to play out a little bit more dramatically than it will in ours, but I don't see it as being a dramatic impact.
Where's this team kind of health-wise going into the season?
For the most part, very good. For the most part, just a few guys are banged up, and we're just going to have to wait it out and see what happens with those guys. But for the most part, we feel, especially on the mound, we feel like we're as healthy as a team can be at this stage.
And Trevor mentioned that he and Butch just kind of came up with the idea to move into the bullpen and put in that closer role. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Trevor, I really think he has just gravitated toward this role so well. He's got a power breaking ball. You know, his fastball really plays in a sprinter type of role, you know, for 10, 15, 20 pitches. I just think he's made for it. He's a really tough kid. He loves to compete. He loves to have a baseball when it matters the most. And certainly that's usually the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. So he has just been incredible in the fall and now in the early portions of the spring out of the bullpen. So we're excited about that transition that he's made.
You're having to replace a couple of outfield spots. Kind of how's that rotation looking?
Yeah, Robson has really made a jump for us in the outfield, both as a power, strength guy and as a runner. Certainly we lost some guys in the outfield who are very, very good players. C.T. Bradford's a really, really good player. DeMarcus Henderson, Armstrong, all those guys really helped our club. But we do feel like we have guys waiting in the wings to take those spots and run with them. And certainly, Robson's one of those guys.
Reed Humphreys is making that transition too.
Yeah, Reed has really done well moving to the left field spot. And, I think he'll have some DH opportunities. I think he'll have some left field opportunities. But I just think Reed, we got to get him in there because he's got a chance to be such a dynamic hitter.
The older guys on this team coming in at a time where they kind of saw some of the lack of success right before them, and then they've had so much success since being here. It's a really loose group, and it stayed that way throughout, with some guys leaving, obviously, and now kind of this class is where they are, and they're upperclassmen. But how would you kind of describe maybe the change in some of the attitudes, particularly maybe when the ball's not in play, for lack of a better description, of this team?
Well, our kids are really loose because we have great character, we have great kids, and they come from great families, and they have really bought into what we do. And I use that word collectively, we, because the kids are so important, and the recruiting process, they're so important into what we do on a daily basis. Their spirit, their togetherness, all those things. I'm not a big fan of the word chemistry, but they do well together, and it's fun to watch them come together because it takes a while when you bring in a different collection of guys.
Some of the recent recruiting efforts, has that been a focus, and looking at guys who you think can fit into this current group and kind of their attitude?
Well, certainly before you even bring somebody into the fold, what we do is we let them hang out with our players. And we want to hear what the recruit has to say about our players, and we want to hear from our players what they have to say about the recruit, because they have to live together. This is a family, and we mean that in every shape, form, fashion. From our oldest player, who's 95 years old, who lives in California, oldest alumni, to our youngest, who's a freshman player in our program right now. We want this to be a family, and certainly we believe that that's what this is, and our kids have to buy into that, and I think they really do.
What have you seen from a guy like Luke Reynolds coming in at third base?
Well, Luke's done really, really well. It's certainly a transition from junior college to the Southeastern Conference, but he has all the characteristics that you're looking for. He can run, he's got arm strength, but it's not going to happen overnight. Does it take a couple of weeks? Does it take a month? Does it take a year? You don't know. That's the funny thing about our sport. But there's no doubt that Luke Reynolds has a very, very bright future.
When you look at a player like John Holland replacing Brett Pirtle, how do you go about trying to replace Brett Pirtle, who is almost irreplaceable?
Well, Brett's such a dynamic athlete. The interesting thing about Brett is I had this conversation with him 2 years ago when he was coming out of junior college out of Panola. I think, if the numbers are right, I think he hit 222 his sophomore year, and I think he made 30 errors in the infield. And just 2 years later, he wins an SEC batting title and is essentially the best defensive player in the Southeastern Conference at his position. That not only talks about his athleticism, it talks about it speaks to how badly he wanted to become a great player. And I think John fits that mold as well.
With the rotation, there seems to be some depth there. Will there be almost a flip where the rotation kind of becomes the backbone of that staff rather than the bullpen that we've seen in the past? Or?
Certainly, early in the year, we're going to have to play a lot of different folks. Matthew Britton is somebody who's really come a long way, especially with the bat. He's worked so hard on his swing, and he is much, much better. Seth Heck is a much improved player, bigger, stronger, faster. The ball comes off his bat differently now. Matt Spruill is a young man who came to us from junior college in Texas by way of Virginia, who has so many different skills. We've got to find opportunities for him to play. We have a young man from the Atlanta area, Gridley, who we feel like is going to be a great player in our program, maybe the future shortstop. He's a dynamic athlete as well. So we got to find opportunities for these guys because they're really good players.
Have you nailed down a starting rotation yet?
We haven't, but Preston Brown is somebody who needs to pitch for us on the weekends. He's been great every time out, especially with the fall in the early part of the spring. Lucas Laster's pitched very well. We'd love to have the capability of putting Ross in the bullpen. Might not have that luxury. Is he the third starter? Don't know yet. Austin Sexton, somebody who's pitched extremely well. And the young freshman from Spanish Fort, Alabama, Jesse McCord, has pitched lights out for us as well too. So we're going to have some competition for those spots, but we've really been able to piece a bullpen together very well also, and hopefully all those pieces will come together for us.
Any other questions?